In this video, we will talk about the features and the configuration of an Odoo module KPI Balanced Scorecard, which was created by faOtools. KPI Balanced Scorecard is an Odoo app which allows users to set up KPI targets and control their fulfillment by periods. The app introduces a convenient KPI dashboard to manage companies and personal targets. It helps to organize work as a set of periodical goals and to control those goals in any business or functional area. Hierarchy allows highlighting certain goals with indicative padding for an instant overview of sub-goals. The app introduces a clear system to get any Odoo storable details, for example, the number of sale orders or the total of all purchase orders, and the possibility to introduce extra details that cannot be found in Odoo. For example, total investments or number of employees. Track the current result of the company and compare it with the set goal. This way, it is always possible to understand which KPIs require more attention in real time at the first glance. Share a set of goals and results with interested users. For example, let the sales manager control the salespeople-related goals. Let's look at some of the concepts used in the module that will allow you to set and track companies' goals. The first one is KPI, or Key Performance Indicator. It is a formula that represents a measurable value that demonstrates how effectively a company is achieving key business objectives. It is used to evaluate the success of reaching a company's goals. In order to create a formula, we need to add some objects that will be used in it. There are several objects that introduce the data for analysis. The first one is basic measurement. It is the core object that is used for retrieving actual KPI values from Odoo data, for example, the number of purchases. Although basic measurements are not used themselves for formula constructions, they are required to prepare any sort of variables. This way, measurement variable is a specification of a basic measurement. The key idea is to simplify data preparation. You define the basic measurement confirmed done sale orders count once, and then unlimitedly use it for such variables as sales count Europe, sales count America, sales count Mitchell, and so on. Another object that might be used in the formula is KPI constants. Constants are a special type of KPI variables used when data cannot be retrieved from modules and/or when figures remain the same during the whole period. For example, total investments or number of employees are often frozen for a specific period. In order to set a KPI target, we also need to create a period. This way, we define a time frame which should be analyzed to control performance. After that, we are finally ready to set a KPI target. KPI target is a goal, so a particular number or amount. It has guidelines and requires a formula to be calculated. This way, a combination of KPI and KPI period results in a KPI target. Exactly with those targets, you work on the scorecard interface. For each KPI that you would like to manage in this period, you should define a planned value, that is KPI target, to compare those to the actual at the end of the period. Now, let's look at the objects that together help us to construct a KPI formula in details. To simplify the KPI setup, it might be useful to turn on Help hints. For that, enable the option Show Help on the app configuration page. After that, the Help tab will be shown for most objects. Let's start with creating a basic measurement. Although basic measurements are not used themselves for formula constructions, they are required to prepare any sort of variables. You can create your own basic measurements or use the ones that are presented in the module. Let's create a basic measurement to track the total of all confirmed and done sale orders. For that, go to Measurements, Basic Measurement, and click Create. Type a name. In our case, it is confirmed done sale orders total. And optionally add a model type before it. In our case, it's sales. This way, we will be able to find the related measurements quickly. Choose a KPI type to activate a set of further fields and define the way the module will get the information for calculations. Choose the KPI type Count of Records if you want to count all matching records, for example, the number of registered leads or the number of posted customer invoices. Choose the KPI type Average of Records field to get the average of records number fields, for example, average planned hours per task or average days to assign a lead. Choose the KPI type Execute in Python code to compute any set of figures based on any Odoo data. This type requires technical knowledge, and in our case we need to choose the KPI type Sum of Records field, as we want to sum up a certain number field of records. In our case, the total amount of all orders. Then we need to choose a model, an Odoo object from which the data will be taken. In our case, it is sale order. Here you can rely on standard or custom objects, including those created in the Odoo Studio. Based on the KPI type, you will see a set of other fields. In our case, we need to add a measure field for the analysis. This field is required only for calculation of the KPI types average and sum. It defines which figure you use for calculations. In our case, we need the field total. And depending on the model that you choose, the list of available fields varies. Then we need to add one or several date fields. Those are fields that will be taken into consideration in the calculations when the period is stated. For example, let's choose order date and creation date. If you choose several fields, then in order for the record to be considered for calculations, both of those fields should be within the period. If date fields are not specified, the calculation will consider all records for all time, regardless of the period. So the set KPI period would not influence the basic measurement. Then, if you work in a multi-company environment, you can add a company field for the analysis. Even after choosing this field on the basic measurement level, you can create a global variable. We will talk about it later. It is also possible to add some filters to restrict the records by any stored field, but it is recommended to add only basic ones and then specify them while creating a measurement variable. Thus, your basic measurement will be more general, and therefore you will have more possibilities for creating a variable. In our case, let's add some basic filters with the status of the order. For that, click Add Filter, Status equals Sale Order. Click on the plus button to add one more filter, Status equals Locked. And let the module find all the records that match any of the rules. Also, avoid adding dates to the filtering options, as then you will be required to change dates every time you create a KPI target for a new period. If you don't add dates restrictions as a filter, you will be able to simply substitute targets. We will talk about it later. In the detailed documentation for the module, you can find some useful examples of the basic measurements. The link will be in the description. Now, as we have created the basic measurement, we can specify it further, or use it as it is by creating a variable. The key idea is to simplify data preparation. You can define a basic measurement total sales once, and then unlimitedly use it for variables sales Europe, sales John Brown, and so on. The specification goes through the Odoo built-in domain constructor, which lets to filter by any storeable attributes. From a basic measurement form view, you can start creating a variable or see the existing linked variables. For that, click on the button with the number of linked variables in the top right corner of the basic measurement. Then click Create to start creating a new linked variable. The field Basic Measurement will be filled in automatically, or click on any variable to see its details or edit it. Or you can start creating a variable by going to Measurements, Measurements Variables, and clicking the button Create. Type the name of the variable. In our case, let's just link a basic measurement to variable to see the total sales of the company. In the field Measurement, choose a basic measurement. Confirmed and done sale orders total. Choose a company, so under a certain company, users will be able to see only related to the company objects, or leave the field empty to make this variable global. I will choose the company of my user, San Francisco. Optionally, add some filters. I'm not going to add filters to this variable, but in the same way, let's create the variables total sales America by adding the filter sales team equals America and total sales Anita Oliver by adding the filters salesperson equals and the ID of the person. The only difference between these variables is in the filters that we add. Basic measurements of the type execute Python code can't be any more specified, since they do not relate to any records. However, such measurements still should have a single variable linked. You will find some useful variables examples, sorted by basic measurements, in the detailed documentation for the module. The link will be in the description. In comparison to measurements, KPI constants are fixed, and they do not depend on actual Odoo data. This allows introducing of the figures which cannot be retrieved from modules and or which should remain the same during the whole period. For example, you might set the constant total investments to calculate return on investments, or the number of employees to get sales revenue per person. Let's create a constant number of employees. For that, go to Measurements, Constants, click Create. Type the constant's title. In our case, it is number of employees. Put the global value, so the number which will be used for all periods, except for the specified ones. Let's say 20 employees. KPI constant value might be defined for each individual period. For each period, the app automatically tries to calculate a parent period. If one period is full inside another one, the latter is considered as a parent for the former. If there is value neither for this period nor for its parent, the global value would be applied. Let's also define a value for particular time frame and see some examples. For that, find the tab by periods and click Add a line. Choose an existing period and type the value for this period that will be used for calculations instead of the global one. Let's say in the first quarter of 2023, the company had 18 employees. During the second quarter, one more employee was hired, so we had 19 employees in total. Now 18 is used for calculations for the first quarter of 2023 and 19 for the second. Let's also create their parent period, year 2023, and set the target value as 21. As we don't state the number of employees for the third quarter, the value for its parent, year 2023, that is 21, will be used for calculations. For the first quarter of the year 2024, there is no value, and it doesn't have a parent value, so the global value 20 will be applied. KPI or KPI Formula is an instruction on how to get the required data from Odoo for further calculations. That determines how to track the result of the company and compare it with the goals. To create a KPI formula, go to the tab KPIs, click New. KPI formulas might combine any number of variables, constants and other KPIs with mathematical operators. Just drag and drop the parts in the right order with the correct operators. Odoo would automatically retrieve data from a database according to a defined parts order for a specified period. When elements get to the right side, they change their color according to the type. Operators become red, measurements become green. They include the default variables, period days, and days passed. We will talk about them later. Other KPIs become blue, constants become gray, and this way it's easier to distinguish them in the formula. Let's create a KPI based on our variable confirmed done sale orders total. Let's write the reference of the KPI, confirmed done sale orders total. And to calculate the result, we only need to add the variable that we have recently created. And it is confirmed done sale orders total. Drag and drop it to the right side of the interface. And the formula is ready. After creating the formula by drag and drop, it is necessary to finish the setup by configuring its settings. The tab Settings is located below the formula wizard. Then you need to choose the related category. KPI category is KPI storage, which is used for convenient navigation over KPIs and managing access rights to them. Each KPI should be assigned for a single category. In order to find required targets quickly, just by checking the boxes on the scorecard interface. It is also possible to create and manage categories in a separate menu. Categories support hierarchy. A category may have a parent and subcategories. You can move the categories in the list by drag and drop to change their sequence. This will help to keep a particular order in the left navigation panel of the KPI Scorecard interface. Keep in mind that the order of subcategories will not affect the order of the parent categories. Therefore, subcategories will always follow their parent category. Then, optionally, you can choose the parent KPI. So this KPI will be shown below as a sub-goal. Optionally, choose a company related to the KPI. In order to track the result in the column Actual Value in the KPI Scorecard interface, which is marked by the color, you need to choose the success criterion. There are two available success criteria, the more the better and the less the better. For example, use the criterion the more the better in KPI sales total or number of sales, and use the criterion the less the better in KPI project average days to close or project planned to working ratio. Simultaneously, you can choose the result type of the KPI. There are three options: number, percentage, and monetary. Depending on the result types, there are some changes in the fields. To the number and percentage result types, you can add a prefix and suffix to make results look good. Prefix is a word or a sign that will be displayed before the result, and suffix is a word or a sign that will be displayed after the result. By default, the percentage result type has the suffix %, which can be changed. The monetary result type doesn't have fields prefix and suffix, but it adds the field currency, where one of the used currencies can be chosen. Keep in mind that the module itself doesn't convert currency, so for the correct calculations, all company transactions should be in one currency. If you create a KPI for sales, it is better to use the model sales report in the related basic measurement. Then the currencies will be analyzed and calculated into one, which is default for the company. Sometimes in some formulas the result may have a reminder, for example after division. To make the result look better, define rounding rules from 0 to 4 decimal points. After that, only up to 4 numbers after the dot will be shown. Optionally, in the tab Extra Target Security, set the access rights for the current KPI formula. We will talk about it later. If necessary, add some notes in the tab Notes. There are also two default variables that you can use for creating formulas within the time frame. You can find them right in the formula wizard. Those are period days, the number of days in the period. KPIs with this variable calculate the result based on the number of days in the current period. And days passed, the number of past days in the period. KPIs with this variable calculate the result based on the number of days passed in the current period. For example, you can see the total sales per day. Both variables are applicable to this KPI, but in the first case, you will see the accurate result only on the last day of the period, as it will compare the actual value with the total number of days in the period, even if the period is a month and at the moment only few days have passed. The variable days passed, on the contrary, will always show a more accurate result, as will compare the actual value with the number of currently passed days. In the detailed documentation for the module, you can find some useful KPI examples. The link will be in the description. As you remember, in order to set a KPI target, we also need to create a period, while goals should be time constrained. The app allows setting periods of any length, including intervals that intersect each other, and even the past periods. You can create some ordinary periods by years, quarters, months, weeks, and days. When periods cross each other, like the year 2023 and first quarter of 2023, the objects that were created during the crossing time are used for calculations in both periods. To create the period from the KPI Scorecard interface, click on the button New. Write the title of the period, choose Dates, optionally choose the period to copy the KPI targets from. We will talk about it later. If you have more than one company, choose the one for which you create the period. In multi-company mode, it cannot be global, so should be created for each company separately. Also, you can create and manage periods through the separate menu. The chosen dates will be used to calculate KPI actual value. You define the date fields on the basic measurement level. For example, you can choose the field created on, and the module will check this field to find the records that match to the period. Thus, the KPI scorecard would show the total revenue for a given period. This way, the KPI may be used for any period of time and as many times as you need, as the dates will be taken from the period where the KPI target is set. In order to compare results for certain periods and see them in a graph, it is recommended to have a more or less strict logic of periods. Usually, KPI targets are set for a whole year and quarterly, monthly intervals. It lets us not only have a KPI overview, but also check historical trends. We will talk about them later. When the end date is already in the past, it is preferable to close the period in order to avoid further calculations and log the values. You can always reopen a period if you close it by mistake or want to revise something. There are two ways to close and reopen a period. The first one is from the KPI Scorecard interface in the left navigation panel. And the second one is in the tab Periods by choosing a period and clicking Close Period, Reopen Period. KPI periods let you also copy targets from existing periods, so use them as a template. We will talk about that later. The next step after creating one or several KPIs is setting a KPI target. By setting up a target value, you indicate which result you would like to achieve by the end of the period and track the actual result to detect flaws. The KPI target is created for a period that is chosen in the left navigation panel. So make sure you have opened the right one before setting it. To set a target, click on the button Set Target. Choose the KPI formula, type the target value, and click Save and Close. As you set the KPI target, it appears in the target list in the main panel. Each KPI target card includes the title, actual value, target value, and actions panel. It is also possible to copy the KPI targets from one of the existing periods. To that end, just push the button Substitute Targets and select a period with proper KPI targets. After that, the list with the KPI target from the chosen period will be created for the current period as well. The KPI formula and KPI target will remain the same, but calculations will take place already for the current period. It significantly saves time, since KPI target usually remains similar for periods of the same length. After that action, you would be still able to change the KPI target of the current period and calculate the actual value for the donor period, of course until you close the period. Actual value lets you track the current progress toward fulfilling the target's value. Depending on the chosen success criteria, the more the better or the less the better, the actual value is analyzed according to the target value, and the result is marked by the color. If the actual value is red, then it shows a negative result. The green actual value shows a positive result. If you added some notes to a KPI, then as you hover over the linked KPI target, the note will appear. A gray KPI target with an exclamatory mark and an A sign in the field actual value shows that either there is not enough data for calculations or there is a mistake in the formula. Hover over the exclamatory mark to see the error type. The KPI interface displays a progress bar column, which counts % completion for positive goals and positive actual values. It works differently for different success criteria. The more the better, the less the better. If the success criteria the more the better is chosen, then the shown colors have the following meaning. Red, the KPI target is under-fulfilled. Green, the KPI target is fulfilled. Green with stripes, the KPI target is over-fulfilled. If the success criteria the less the better is chosen, then the shown colors have the following meaning. Red, the actual value is overspent. Green, the actual value is within the KPI target. Green with stripes, the actual value is lower than the KPI target and can be further raised. In case the percentage has got over 100, it is still shown graphically up to 200, while the width of 1% in each row remains the same. On the left side of a KPI Targets card, there are some buttons that you can click. Click Change Target, so in the opened pop-up window, you will be able to manually type the new KPI target. To see the history of KPI by periods, click on the History icon. In the pop-up window, you will see a diagram, History by Similar Periods. The app automatically considers various periods which might be compared to this one and shows users a chart of actual values by a specific KPI. We will talk about it later. To delete the target, click on the cross icon on the right side of the KPI target. In the pop-up window, you will be asked to confirm the decision. The KPI targets list is formed according to the hierarchy. Hierarchy allows highlighting targets with indicative padding for an instant overview of sub-KPI targets. The hierarchy is set according to KPI sequence and parent-child relations. To change the sequence of KPIs, move them in the tab KPIs by drag and drop, Or open any KPI and type the number in the field sequence. In order to be on top, the sequence should be smaller. KPI's relations are more important than the sequence, so the parent KPI will always be higher than its sub-KPIs, and the sub-KPIs will not be divided by other KPIs, no matter what their sequence is. You can set the parent KPI below the formula wizard as you create or edit KPI. After setting a target, keep in mind that calculations take place according to the system schedule. To avoid waiting and see the actual value right away, click Calculate. You can change the frequency of the automatic KPI calculation. For that, go to Configuration, Settings, click Configure cron job. In the field Execute Every, choose the number and type of period the actual KPI should be recalculated. Then click Save. The module supports the export of KPIs. The KPIs are exported and imported in the XLSX format. To export KPIs, click on the button Export Scorecard in the KPI Scorecard Interface. The downloading will start automatically. The KPIs are exported for a particular period, which is chosen in the left navigation panel. The following fields are exported: KPI, KPI Target, Actual Value, and Notes. The exported KPIs save the order and are structured according to the hierarchy. The file itself is named after the period that it represents. There are several ways to navigate among the KPI targets: by the category, by the search bar, and by referring to the previously saved search parameters. Tick a category to see all its KPIs. If you choose a parent category, you will see all KPIs of its subcategories as well. To reset the choice, click on the icon by the word Categories. If you have a lot of categories and subcategories, then you may find it difficult to navigate through them and select the ones you need quickly. Thus, for extra convenience, a special search bar above the categories list was introduced. Just start typing the word and click Enter or the search button, and the matching results will be shown and marked red. Click the button Reset on the right side of the search bar to empty the search. Simultaneously, you can use the search bar above the main part of the interface to find the KPI targets by the connected KPI. Just start typing the KPI's title and click Enter. To reset the search, click on the cross by it. The module tracks the history of set KPI targets and related actual values by periods. In order to compare results for a certain time and see them in a graph, it is recommended to have more or less strict logic of periods. The app automatically considers various periods which might be compared and show users a chart of actual values by a specific KPI. To consider periods similar, they should have the same number of days adjusted for history tolerance. Sometimes the length of periods cannot be precise. For example, in February there are 28 and sometimes 29 days. So you can instruct the module on which periods should be considered similar by defining the tolerance on the configuration page. Find the field History Tolerance. Type the difference, number of days, that periods can have in order to be considered similar. For example, 7 days periods might be compared to 5 days and 9 days periods. Then tolerance would be 2. It is necessary to have at least 2-day tolerance to compare quarterly periods, since a quarter might take from 90 to 92 days, and at least 3-day tolerance for months, as February may last 28 days. In the KPI Scorecard interface, click on the History button to see the automatically created graph of the KPI target for the related period. Switch between bar and line graphs to conveniently analyze the results. By default, the line graph is shown. On the graph, you will see the set KPI target and the actual value for the related period. Both the goal and the actual value can be hidden from the chart. Just click on the related label above the graph. Click one more time to make it visible on the graph again. The progress of the KPI completion is expressed by the color scheme. On the line graph, red color shows that the KPI target is not completed, light green color that the target is over-fulfilled, and dark green color that the KPI target is planned and fulfilled. On the bar graph, the KPI target is always green, and the actual value can be red, the goal is unfulfilled, or green, the goal is completed. Below the graph, there is a table, which shows the chosen KPI target for all the periods, regardless of the number of days in them. Keep in mind that in order to see the results in a graph, there should be enough historical data for the similar periods. Otherwise, the list of results by periods will be shown below an empty graph. KPI managers can also see the statistics of the KPI fulfillment in the KPI Trends interface. The related button can be found in the sys tray as you open the KPI app. KPI Trends contain a list of all history charts, graphs for all KPIs, which have KPI targets set. Depending on the existing periods, Odoo will calculate the available period types, according to the specified tolerance parameter. This way, goals will be shown by duration. For example, quarterly, yearly goals. To see the statistic for all available period types, choose the option All Period Types. In case you work in a multi-company environment and have access to several companies, you can switch between them to see the related KPIs. For all charts, you can switch between the line bar view. Just choose the type of view in the left functional interface. For all charts at once, you can hide KPI targets actual values. To show hide KPI targets, click the slider button Show Targets. To show hide actual values, click the slider button Show Actual. You can filter KPIs by category. For that, just tick the Categories in the left functional interface. If you choose a parent category, you will see all KPIs of its subcategories as well. To reset the choice, click on the icon by the word Categories. If you have a lot of categories and subcategories, then you can use a special search bar above the categories list to find the ones you need quickly. The list of available charts will be seen in the main interface. Above, you will see the reference of the KPI, the button that allows expanding the graph on the whole screen and hiding it back, and the buttons to switch between the line and bar graphs. You can show hide KPI targets actual values of a particular graph. For that, just click on the related label above the graph. Click one more time to make it visible on the graph again. Scroll down to see all available history graphs, or use the KPI filters, which are organized hierarchically in the left functional panel to find the related KPI targets quickly. For that, just tick one of the KPIs. If you choose a parent KPI, you will see all included KPIs as well. To reset the choice, click on the icon by the word KPIs. Above the KPIs filters in the left functional panel, you will also find the search bar to find the required ones quickly. Just start typing the word and click Enter or the search button, and the matching results will be shown in marked red. Click the button Reset on the right side of the search bar to empty the search. Rights to administrate KPI belong to two user roles, KPI User and KPI Manager. If the internal user doesn't have one of the KPI roles assigned, the related menu will be hidden for such a user. Simple KPI users see only the KPI targets to which they have rights. They can set targets for available to them KPIs and can edit targets based on the KPIs that they have the right to edit. Rights to see or edit KPIs are managed on two levels, for a single KPI and for the whole category. KPI category rights and KPI own rights are combined. There are two types of access rights, read rights and edit rights. Read rights let users only observe shared KPIs. Edit rights would also allow setting and changing targets. The latter might be useful in case you ask your manager to manage goals within a department. To give access to a particular KPI to a user or a user group, go to the tab KPIs and start creating or editing a KPI. Scroll down and open the tab Extra Target Security. Choose users or whole user groups that will be able to see or edit the KPI. You can also administrate user accesses in a batch by configuring access rights to a whole category. A person or a user group that has a certain right to a category doesn't have the access to its subcategories. To give access to a particular category, go to Configuration, KPI Categories. Start creating or editing a category. If you want some users or user groups to have the access to see the category and KPI targets, state them in the Read Rights section. If you want some user or user groups to have the access to edit the KPI targets of a category, state them in the Edit Rights section. Access to all KPIs and linked KPI targets is available only for the users with the right KPI manager. KPI managers would have full rights for all KPIs disregarding the settings, while other users would have rights only to KPIs which settings or category settings allow them so. To assign a KPI manager, go to Settings, Manage Users, choose a particular user, scroll to the section Productivity. In the field KPI Management, choose the option KPI Manager. I hope this video will be useful for you. Feel free to contact us to try the module in the demo instance. See you in the next videos.